I've been taught to this day, because the force-fed colonialist dictionaries and all they put to choke me, covered my grandmother's tongue with tattooed Christian scriptures. They silenced me, slapped me when I tried to speak like my family, and told me I had no history before the European missionaries, whose mission was to spread God like their diseases, infest the royally incested families, diluting sacred blood, causing in a century over 600,000 casualties. All for God, they said, would end our suffering, and so we converted. But we kept dying, and we have been praying. We haven't been surviving. But Mana'o cannot be created or destroyed by man, so it must mean we still stand a chance. We've got one shot to make it back, but it means we need to honor what was left after Christ said we couldn't dance, couldn't chant. We need to use what was left to fight back. It's January 17, 2008, and I cried this morning. Hung flags at half-mast and tried to silence my mourning. A nation remembered its distresses. I got dressed and I tried my best to forget. But I couldn't. Because the second I start worshiping the red, white, blue, pledging allegiance to a nation that turned our people white, eyes red, and hearts blue, is the second I know the fight was through. And in 1893, we promised to back our queen until she was free, daring to call ourselves the famous flowers of the land we weren't even willing to protect. We promised to stand hand in hand fighting, so here I stand at the palace, screaming. I stand holding hands with ancestors, trying to find voices. But what is a voice worth when no one is listening? What is a song worth that can overturn opinions when no one is singing? We should be ashamed of ourselves, because we should be singing. When you finally feel like joining me, I will be here, waiting, but not idly. I will be singing.
Yeah.
Not once has, yeah, probably. You want me to stand right here?
Let me see you.
Yeah. Not once has the group that the audience, I don't want to play the audience, the people that I've been talking to who started singing with me, that I'm just going to try really hard not to break down right now. Okay, let me start with the poem that we saw part of earlier, because I like to introduce myself by introducing my family, so I'm just going to do that really quick. My name is Jamaica, Osorio. My father is Jonathan K. Kamakuiwa Osorio. My mother, her name is, my mother is Mary Carol Dunn Osorio. My father's family comes from Keaukaha on the island of Hawaii. His father's name is Elroy Osorio. His mother is Claire K. His grandmother, full-blooded Hawaiian, Liza Kamakuiwa comes from Keaukaha. That's where my Hawaiian blood is rooted. But I was born and raised in Honolulu. I'm a city girl. Don't mistake it. Coming here is beautiful, but I'm struggling. They said there's no movie theaters here. Messing up because I'm exhausted. Slow down. Yeah. You guys get tired. You guys get kids and stuff.
You guys get kids and stuff.
But it is a blessing to be here. And it is a blessing for me to be able to share some of my Mana'o, but even more to offer these makanas to the people who spoke before me. I'm going to do a poem in a couple seconds called Duty. And I wrote it because I attended a Molokai on the island of Oahu for 7 years. And I struggled there growing up for a multitude of reasons. The first being that no one in my family, when I went to school, spoke Hawaiian yet, so I didn't know the language. So I kind of got thrown into a school where I couldn't understand what my teachers were saying. A lot of my classmates went to Leo and I didn't, so I couldn't understand what they were saying. But I was also different. I didn't want to dress the way all the other girls dressed, and they had a problem with that, and I had a problem with them having a problem with that, so I didn't want to be there. So I struggled while I was there. I struggled with the kind of sacrifice they were making and didn't understand. why it was so important. And yet I felt so empowered to learn the language. I felt so empowered that I wanted to learn the Mololo. But I felt a tremendous amount of pressure that I was the only child in my household learning these things. And that pressure has stuck with me to this day. I feel like I have a tremendous amount of responsibility to my people. But I've tried to transform that pressure into something empowering. That allowed me to leave this island with the firm belief that I know I will return. No matter how long I am gone, I will return. And I will find my roots here. And there's no other place that I can grow like I can in Hawaii. But I want to specifically do this poem for the hula we saw earlier. There's a portion of the poem where I talk about dancing hula. And it was mandatory for us to dance hula, and I just couldn't do it. There were these girls and these boys who could tell these Mololo with their body, and it wasn't me. And so I felt like I was a robot. I felt like I was being told to do these things, and I was just repeating what they were telling me to do, but I wasn't really grasping it. And seeing these people dance, it's so much further beyond that than just listening. It's knowing. And I know that I hold a different kind of knowing. So I don't feel shame that I'm not a dancer, but I feel a tremendous amount of pride to be able to see dancers and to see people who know these oli and know these Mololo. So I'm going to do this poem for the dancers, for everyone who spoke here, and anyone in the room who either attended the Molokai or sent their child to Molokai, because we know the kind of sacrifices and the kind of risk we have taken by doing that. On my first day of Hawaiian immersion school, my teacher wouldn't let me use the bathroom. Not until I could ask her in Hawaiian. I was 5. We shared similar skin tones, but I was alien, talked with different tongues, opposite accents. Parents are supposed to prepare their children for kindergarten, but mine strapped landmines to my melon and threw me into the deep end and told me to swim, so I tread. Taught me brown is cursed, but to wear it like pride, cultured. To staple a new vocabulary to my cup every morning, learning words that would satisfy my cultural thirst for happiness. Cultural renaissance comes first, but the seeds of the songs of these trees are cut from the branches early, sacrificed to the cause. But children, we do not understand the meaning of sacrifice, that prices are needed to be paid in order for anything to be saved. Only learn that self-preservation takes precedence, but are given no tools and implementing self-defense. So backwards in our minds, we learn to tear our hooks from our peers, how to curse from our fathers, hate from our mothers. From whom did we learn to heal? Our grandmothers are the only ones who have learned to forgive and can't even speak the same language as them. So we race against the decay of textbooks, trace the cuts of colonialism in our skin, because the words of our kings have been bitter on our tongues like sour toy. We rinse our mouths with our regrets, trying to find purpose. Learning sacrifice is a tool our mothers preach like martyrdom. It tastes the same to us, but it's forced from our lips in different names. When did we learn anything other than blame? That shame is more than skin deep, and our mothers cannot scrub it away before bedtime. There is resentment beaten into our kneecaps like aipa'a, sweat, respect at the feet of our kumu. From muscle to memory, we follow orders hella. Place iron foot on cold floorboard. Kaholo, we kaholo. Jump, we jump. Practice makes perfect robots, so we dance for our fathers, our grandmothers. We learn protocol before nursery rhymes perpetuate cycles like wildfire. We are the sacrifice. The lucky enough to learn a half-dead language, not given the choice of which tongue is split at the end of the day, and whether the splinters of the remains pierce our hearts or our brains. At the end of the day, are the two the same? If we are the future, does that mean we cannot claim our own present? I have very few regrets. Most notably, not being able to love myself through adversity while second-guessing my parents' decision to send me on an awkward path towards education. There are some things and life lessons that I have managed to miss. I've gone through the equation, not able to simplify any variables into any other conclusion than this. Sacrifice is nothing to find shame in, but only strength in the remains of my self-esteem and the fact that I got through the system able to breathe. I find comfort in my ability to understand sacrifice and to know that it is rarely ever a choice. And what we didn't understand back then is that fighting for your culture is not sacrifice, it's duty. grapevine, I haven't had the opportunity to really uphold my olelo. And so I've forgotten a lot, which is why I don't grapevine. But I sat down a couple weeks ago to write a love poem in English, and this came out. And it's in Hawaiian. And so it reminds me that it's still somewhere inside of me, and I just need to be ready to kind of sit down with it and let it out. And I believe I can say the same for everyone in this room. Even if you haven't formally learned the language, and you're Hawaiian, it's somewhere inside of you. And you just need to sit down and be ready to let it out. So I'm going to read this poem. And I'm not going to translate it. I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry. Moya ni ko mukani. Ina mai ka po mai ko e o. Mai ko ili mai ko ubai maka. Mai ko mamaka mai ko umalu. Mai ko lima ko walo e konuma kuleo I kalai I ko honi. He mau mea I kuna I loko o ko kino ko walola. Ko haheo. Ko palima. Humu ia I ke kua o ko a ino laila. No kala. No makuki. No konua e vili ia me ko uili. Ko iwi, ko una au, a o oe ke kauna. A o oe ka mea nui. A o oe ka moana. A o oe ka ua o vau na mea isu. O vau na mea kolo. O vau ka lepo. O vau ka aina. Na mea e kū ana mauloa. Na kōhaku I poina e kālai na hulu. Mai ka ipu ana iwi a o oe ka halika. Ka lati. Na mea e hoi mau ai. Na mea e ho'o mau ana. Na mele e kūlia nei. Pai pai o haa o ko woni. E moiana e komakana. I'm going to do a couple more if that's okay.
Almost 15 minutes.
So this, I'm about to start my final year at Stanford, and I feel a sense of relief to be almost done with California. But I also feel really blessed because I was able to finish all of my coursework last year. So I could have graduated last year, but I felt like I just started enjoying it, so I should probably go my fourth year and spend some time with my classmates. And so I decided I would write a thesis. And I met a professor on campus who would allow me to write a thesis about something in Hawaii if I got a secondary reader in Hawaii. So I'm researching and writing a thesis about Hawaiian women in Molelo, and how the transcription of those Molelo by missionaries, both in Hawaiian and English, changed the way that we look at Hawaiian women today. So I've been reading a lot of Molelo recently, and it's so amazing to be a Stanford student, and all I'm doing is reading the most amazing stories ever. So I recently wrote this poem, and it's a love poem. But I was able to use all these names for the mo'olelo, and if you don't know the mo'olelo, the poem may not mean that much to you, but it means a tremendous amount of me to be able to call these names out and to know what they mean. I also want to do this one name that isn't included in the poem, which doesn't really make sense to me why I didn't include it, Tina, which is weird because I've been having a very interesting relationship with Tina recently. I am in the middle of finishing a tattoo that runs from my back to my leg, and I actually have those moon phases running down my side, and somehow in getting that put on my body, it's changed the way that my relationship with Tina, and the way that I look at her, and I think the way that she looks at me. So I want to do this for her, even though she's not in the poem. Okay. Remember when your hands were dirty, carried the stray pieces of hearts you weren't mature enough to care for, how everything you touched dehydrated, turned to stone, how your uneasiness crushed each statue girl you ever loved, how you were the bearer of dust, of rubble, of broken hearts and empty sleeves. Do not forget the scars, how their brokenness entered your palms in shards, stayed there and left its mark. How every time you touch a glass girl now, you crack her with the diamonds crusted in your love lines. Because this will be the way you learn to love her stable. This will be the way you learn to love her stable, steady, her only. Think of her as anything but a bypass, a highway, a sunrise, or a sunset, anything that makes you feel fast, short, and beautiful. Call her something frequent, something forever, but less heavy. Do not call her an ocean. You have given that name to someone else you love differently. Do not call her your shore. Do not call her your soulmate. That's taken to call her beautiful. Even though said, it's a name she understands, something she can grasp. It will not scare her to hear, but make sure you mean it every time you say it, that you look her in the eye like it was a promise. When she learns to trust you with the shards of her mother tongue in private, tell her you love her, even if you have known for months, until she is willing to say it in a language that your blood can understand, stay silent. Then, stop translating everything and give her the original transcripts. Give her a name for every morning you wake up to, thinking of her smile, for the way she seems to put stars in every the skies, Haumea, for the way she makes you wish you were more of a woman, Hele, for the way she can burn every inch of you with her gaze and her silence, Papa, for how she seems to have given life to everything around you, for how you travel all the islands to find her, because you have heard of her beauty and you trust it. Take every mo'olelo you have ever read or heard and find a place for it on the breath between your bodies. Learn its purpose through her kiss, because you know that this kind of memory is embodied. And when you are sure, when you are steady, finally, call her Hiaka. Hold her in your chest. Make sure she is the one you will keep, who will stay. When you run out of names, of women, of trees, of roots, call her something heavier. Call her Moana. For the bluest parts of you, the dark spots, the cracks you hope she'll someday see, and learn to love. Learn to not let fall through you, slide off her skin. When you reintroduce her to your father, use the pronoun ku'u, because it fits. Because ko'u is too serious and ka'u doesn't quite do it. Tell him that she is every moon you have carved on your skin, and you are every tide that follows. Tell him that she is the morning you have been wanting to make. That most nights you were kept awake just by the thought of your lips on her temple, that somehow you found every single one of her gods in the melody of her breath. Tell him that she is real and that you are ready. That she is Hiaka and you are Hopoi, writing poems for every part of her body. How you would burn under the weight of her mistakes, while planting songs in the form of yellow liquid trees, hoping that the salt water between you might be worthy of her love.
That was good. Oh, not too high tech. I think
Struggling to pick which poem I want to do for my last poem.
almost 20 minutes.
Huh?
Almost 20 minutes.
I asked something to fall on the stage. Okay. I'm going to do something a little political.
Yeah.
In October 2010,
Can you hold this? My head is getting sore. It's almost been 20 minutes.